It puts this on a rocket docket for the Supreme Court. They've got to get involved. They've got to get involved, first of all, because there's not much time to make a final decision. And they also have got to get involved because this is dead wrong. I think they're wrong on the law.
Yep, Jonathan Turley weighing in late last night. Colorado election earthquake as left-wing judges kicked former President Trump off the ballot in that state, citing insurrection akin to our Civil War. What does it mean for the quest to be president and be number 47? What about other states preparing to do the same thing? Our only hope, perhaps, the Supreme Court. Once again, Jonathan Turley joins us now. Jonathan, I saw last night, that's as concerned as I've ever heard you last night on a court decision. It really bothered you more as an American than a legal expert, I felt. Am I right?
It does bother me quite deeply. This is exceptionally dangerous. I mean, it is an anti-democratic opinion, and it could set us on a course that would be incredibly destabilizing for our system. You know, our system is not perfect, but the one thing that it can recommend itself for is that it's been stable. It survived crises that reduced other countries to a fine pumice. And so we have a system that's built to last. This is introducing a new element. This is introducing the ability of states to effectively block the leading candidate for the presidency by barring them from ballots. And it'll result in a tit for tat. And this is something that is quite familiar in other countries. This is the way things are in places like Iran, where they have ballot cleansing, where you have, people in government tell you who's just not appropriate for you to vote for. And we're looking down that road. Now, quite fortunately, we have a Supreme Court that I think will make fast work of this. I think that they're just dead wrong on the history, on the language, on the interpretation of the 14th Amendment. What was striking, but yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, for everyone listening, this isn't the first time this has been brought up. These other states have brought these loose lawsuits forward, and they've dismissed them in Minnesota, New Hampshire, Florida, Idaho, Utah, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Maine. They all brought it up, and they all said, no, there's nothing. This was not an insurrection. It's not akin to the Civil War. We're not doing it. But waiting, pending appeal, Arizona and Michigan, Vermont, New York, Oregon, New Jersey, New Mexico, Virginia, Nevada, Wisconsin, Texas, Alaska, South Carolina, West Virginia, Wyoming. Are we going to go through this 13 more times?
I don't think so. I think that this is now going to be fast-tracked to the Supreme Court. What's really striking about this opinion is that they had a series of interpretive barriers to get to this outcome. There's a series of hurdles they had to get over. They adopted the most sweeping possible interpretation at each of those hurdles in order to get this result. The only part of the opinion that is narrow is when they deal with the First Amendment. Then they become incredibly narrow, and they say that Trump does not have any free speech protections for his January 6th speech. So it's a real, neck-breaking change in the middle of the opinion. And so there's lots of reasons why the Supreme Court would overturn this. The other thing I want to note, by the way, I noted last night, this is a court composed entirely of Democrats. And to their credit, 3 of these justices refused to sign on to this thing. And many of those jurists in other states that have rejected this, in my view, unfounded theory were also Democrats. And they did that not because they had any loyalty to Trump. It's because they have a loyalty to the Constitution. And, I think we have to remember that there are plenty of Democrats out there who understand how dangerous this is and how wrong it is and how anti-democratic it is. And I'm still hoping, just because I think this would be a healing moment for the country, that the 3 liberal justices on the Supreme Court could join their colleagues in saying no, that this is wrong.
Right.
The reason I'm so alarmed is we've gone through over 200 years of trying to perfect democracy as best as we can, as a people of good faith. We've come too far and too long to reach this point where you have these 4 justices that would convert this country into the type of system that we see in places like Iran, where voters are simply told, you can't vote for this person. And the fact that Trump is surging right now and Biden is on the ropes only makes it more disturbing. It's like having a boxer on the ropes and the ref calling the match for him.
So listen to how other channels are covering this. They feel obviously differently. Watch.
This is not a crazy thing for a democracy to do. This is this is something that was a hallmark of post-war Germany. It's not unheard of.
It's very much like the reasoning of the conservative legal community.
And yes, the courts have the authority to enforce the 14th Amendment.
There's no getting out of this for the Supreme Court. Even failing to act or acting slowly will be acting.
The conservatives on the Supreme Court, who usually go on and on and on about states' rights, are hypocrites, and they are comfortable being hypocrites, and they will overturn Colorado's own state court process, but they shouldn't.
So those are the so-called legal experts, except Rachel Maddow weighing in there first. They were pretty, I guess, caught by surprise a little bit, but think that it's the right move. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of confirmation on other channels. Believe it or not, Donald Trump's opponents, Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and even Chris Christie, all don't like the decision.
Yeah, the hypocrisy on this is stunning when you listen to those other stations. First of all, it's utter nonsense that this is a states' rights issue. This is the interpretation of the United States Constitution. Okay, this is not just the interpretation of some state law. You know, the justices don't say, well, okay, those 4 justices on the Colorado Supreme Court says the 14th Amendment means this. We just have to sign off on it. It's just ridiculous. And when people say things like that are knowingly untrue, you have to really question their veracity. And so, yeah, it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and I do think that it will be overturned. The key here, however, is what those liberal justices do, because they need to put this not just to rest. The theory is ridiculous, but they need to do it in a way that brings us together. And I hope that these 3 justices do not allow that moment to pass.
Right, and I hope if the Supreme Court justices come out, I hope it's 9-0. So people can't just say, well, Trump picked these justices and they're just rewarding him. That, even though we know that's not the truth, that's how it'll be interpreted. So the Colorado Secretary of State was ebullient last night. Just thought this was the best move ever. Listen to her reasoning. Cut 4.
My job as Secretary of State is to make sure that only qualified candidates appear on our ballot. We routinely do that with all types of candidates. And just like I wouldn't allow Arnold Schwarzenegger on the presidential primary ballot because he is disqualified for not being a natural-born citizen, a candidate who is disqualified under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment similarly would be barred. Ultimately, it is up to the court systems. And right now, the highest case that we have says that Donald Trump is disqualified because he disqualified himself when he tried to steal the presidency from the American people.
Add a little opinion at the end there. What are your thoughts about her reasoning?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's obviously she has to say that, but there's a big difference between language like you have to be a natural-born citizen, you have to be a particular age, and what happened here. Even these 4 justices admitted that they were on uncharted territory, that this was not clear. And 3 of their colleagues, basically the court split down, virtually down the middle. It was 4-3. And 3 of their Democratic colleagues refused to sign on to this thing for obvious reasons. And so this really falls into the only doctrine that they're applying, in my view, is the Oscar Wilde doctrine, that the only way to be rid of temptation is to yield to it. And they did. They yielded to it. And the people that have been pushing this theory, and they have failed in state after state, just kept going to blue states until they could find judges that would sign off. Well, they found 4, and I guess we shouldn't be shocked. But down deep, am I alarmed? Yes. But I'm more disappointed that anyone sitting on a court like the Colorado Supreme Court would take a hatchet to democratic values the way they did. And by the way, the people that said, conservatives are all about this type of reasoning, that's ludicrous. This opinion is so sweeping in its interpretation, I can't find any limiting principle. I can't find any way you couldn't use this against many others. I mean, they actually say that you could go back to 2016, which they did, and pull speeches from Trump and say that that's evidence of his intent on in the January speech. And so they're saying that we don't even have to use your words at the moment or even shortly before or after. We can go years in the past and say you were building to this moment.
Yeah, they say the January 6th report was something they also looked at. And they said that, by the way, don't you think real quick it was relevant that Jack Smith has not charged him with it? How do you remove someone because you think they had an insurrection when it's never been charged? It's not even being litigated.
Right. And we know that Jack Smith threw everything he could at Donald Trump, short of an endangered species violation. I mean, anything that he could make out, he put in that indictment. But the one noticeable thing was he did not charge with incitement or insurrection or sedition. And the reason is he knew he couldn't prove it because it's not there. January 6th is a lot of things, none of them particularly good, but it was not an insurrection.
Got it. Jonathan, we're going to be watching your coverage and see how this develops. When we say quickly, what does quickly mean in Supreme Court with the Supreme Court calendar?
I would think that the Supreme Court would be moving on this within a matter of 2 weeks, easily.
2 weeks. Okay.
I think that they have no choice.
Got it. And it's not just primary ballot, it is the ballot in November.
Right.
Jonathan Turley, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.